Are you strategic? The answer can make or break your business. Welcome to Strategic Minds, the podcast where we'll do a deep dive into conversations with extraordinary leaders and world-class performers to learn how they think, plan, and act strategically. I'm your host, Rich Horwath, author of 8 books on strategic thinking, including my newest book, Strategic. And my vision is to teach the world to be strategic. Now, let's explore Strategic Minds.
We're stuck.
What do we do? I have no idea.
You need a new strategy.
We need a more dynamic strategy.
The strategy?
You have to strategize.
But you won't strategize.
Let's talk a little strategy.
Welcome to Strategic Minds. I'm excited to chat with my guest today, Dr. Jim Loehr, who's widely considered the father of mental toughness based on his pioneering work in the field of sports psychology. Jim is a world-renowned performance psychologist whose science-based energy management system has been featured in leading national publications, including the Harvard Business Review, Business Week, Fortune, and many more. With more than 30 years of research and applied practice, Jim has coached hundreds of world-class performers across business, sport, medicine, law enforcement, and the military, from Fortune 100 executives and special forces teams to elite athletes including Jim Courier, Monica Seles, Marco Mira, Justin Rose, Mike Richter, and Olympic gold medalist Dan Jansen. Jim is the retired chairman, CEO, and co-founder of the Human Performance Institute, later acquired by Johnson & Johnson, where he helped more than 400,000 people increase their professional and personal performance. He is the author of 19 books, including the New York Times bestseller, The Power of Full Engagement. And for those of you watching on YouTube, here's a copy of that. I also have copies of many of Jim's other books in my personal library, and we'll put links to those in the show notes. Jim, thanks for being my guest on the show today.
Thank you, Rich. I'm very excited to join you. I really hope we can create some value for your audience.
Yeah, let's do it. So, Jim, let's begin with your origin story. Please share with us where you grew up and how that environment and the people there shaped who you are today.
So I was actually born and raised in a suburb of Denver, Wheat Ridge, Colorado, and I'm probably now 10 minutes from my original home. Even though I was in Florida for 40-some years building my business, when COVID came, I decided to be home where I have 3 sons, and they're all here in Denver, and I've had a home here for a very long time, but I said, this is where I belong, and I think it was a very good decision, but I missed the warm weather of Florida, I can tell you.
I believe it. I believe it. So, Jim, share with us a little bit about what inspired you to focus your career, really to dedicate your life to helping human beings perform at their optimal level. What were some of the early things that triggered that evolution for your career?
Well, you know, I went in a very convoluted direction, to say the least. I was very interested as an undergraduate, student in perceptual psychology, and I went on and got my master's and doctorate in community mental health. And at the time I did that, there was no such thing as sports psychology. It was virtually non-existent as a specialty in psychology. So I went on and I became a licensed psychologist in the state of Colorado. And shortly thereafter, I was offered a very big job, very surprisingly, as chief psychologist and executive director of a very large community mental health center system. I served the whole central and southern part of Colorado. We had 9 offices, covered 8,600 square miles. And that's really kind of what I was trained to do. But I ran into someone who changed my life, and his name was Dr. Joe Vigil. In that catchment area, he had a team that he was training, these track and field athletes. He is a legend in track and field. Everybody knows Joe Vigil. And he and I became very close friends. And he kept asking me a question that I could not answer. He said, Jim, as a psychologist, all that you know about psychology, what can you tell me that helped me get more out of my athletes? And I looked at him like a deer in headlights. And I said, Joe, I don't have any clue. He said, I said, I'll do some literature search. And I went all over the world trying to find data around that. And he said, listen, one day that's going to be a very big field. You want to think about applying it. You love sport. You're a sports guy. I'll help you here. You can work with my athletes. Let's just see whether or not there might be a future there. That I know you have a big job here, but this might be something really pioneering for you. And he kept pressing me. And eventually I got this almost intoxicated obsession with applying psychology to human performance. And our mental health center was doing fantastically. But I resigned to a 23-member board of directors. And they thought it was a ploy for more money. And they nearly doubled my salary.
Jeez.
And I said, no. I want to go I want to apply psychology to sport.
Right.
And they thought I had duly lost my mind. And they said, well, obviously Loehr can't handle the stress. And so I lost a lot of my colleagues because they had no idea what I was doing. And I moved to Denver, set up a private practice, and started across the street from the University of Denver, their Department of Sports Science. And I realized I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything. I really, I had athletes coming in, but I go, and there was nowhere I could go. There was Tom Tutko and a few people at San Jose State that were doing academic work and some practical work in a university. But so I looked around and I said, I have got to learn. If I'm going to do something here, I can't do it from where I am now. Jimmy Connors was opening up a new center in Santa Harbor, Florida. And Bob Davis was looking for someone to run that facility. So I told him, if I had access to Jimmy's brain, I'll come and run that facility. So I was there for 2 years. I took all the video of Jimmy because he was the best competitor in tennis at that time.
Yeah.
And I didn't prove very valuable. He didn't tell Jimmy that I was coming.
Oh, geez.
And so, I did collect a lot of information, but where I really learned everything is I went to the Nick Bollettieri Tennis Academy. Nick asked me to move my whole operation there, and I became director of sports psychology and sports science for 6 years. And that is when I learned everything. But I love to learn. And if I'm not learning, I feel like I'm kind of like dead. And so I'm still pushing the envelope and trying to find new ways to solve this very mysterious mind-body connection.
Well, Jim, I appreciate you sharing that story. I think a lot of our listeners are leaders, and sometimes leaders feel like we've got to have all the answers. And I love the fact that you went into this field and we're a pioneer. And to your point, you realized I don't really know enough, but you were hungry to find that knowledge and to put yourself in the situations to gain those insights. So I think that's a great lesson for all the listeners out there is don't feel like we have to have all the answers all the time, but let's be hungry enough to put ourselves in situations where we can gain those insights. So Jim, let's start then with that beginning of your career. You talked about the Bollettieri Academy and mental toughness. Let's just take a step back. How do you define mental toughness? What does that mean for folks today?
Yeah, the way in which I define it, it's a learned capacity, skill. It's not something you're born with. It's an acquired capacity to ignite the full range of your talent and skill on demand, regardless of the situation that you might be in. So it might be war, might be sports, might be at home with your family. There's all kinds of situations that call forth the best that you have. And the conditions are not ideal on the outside, but you have to bring it on the inside. And so it's an acquired state, and it's learned over many lessons, and you never get it perfectly because it's an internal chemistry mobilization. It's all about what's going on under your skin. What's going on in your brain, everything from blood chemistry, brain oscillation, EEG patterns. The more you get into the complexity of how this is mobilized, you have to train in multidimensional ways, generally, and you never have it 100%. And that's why you must devote yourself to that, probably for as long as you want to be able to access whatever you have inside in the crucible of stress.
You mentioned your early start with the Bollettieri Academy and some of the tennis greats, and we mentioned a few of them earlier, Jim Courier, Monica Seles. What were some of your initial learnings around mental toughness when you were there at the Academy, observing some of these players, talking with them, watching them perform? What were some of the initial principles around mental toughness that you started to formulate?
Well, first of all, when I came there, everyone thought I was a little weird because mental toughness was like anyone who would see a psychologist is having mental health problems.
Oh, okay.
Because my background was mental health. They go, oh, you're going to go see a shrink, are you?
Oh, geez.
So it was, I had to kind of build my capacity for having an impact very slowly. And I began to realize at Bollettieri's that the most important thing I could do was to humanize the environment. I began to realize that there's a person inside all this. And if you're at the top of the pyramid, like Andre Agassi or Courier or any of those incredibles, number one group, but then there are those that are in group 5 or 6 or 4 and 3, and they're working just as hard, and they oftentimes just continue to stay in the same group, or they backslide as better players come in.
Mm-hmm.
And so this idea, they're all there to do the same thing, to become the best player that they can be and go into professional tennis.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality was a very small number, almost beyond 1%, or less than 1%, are actually going to make a living for the rest of their life as a professional tennis player.
Mm-hmm.
And I began to look at this, and I wanted to humanize the environment. And I submitted a list of 50 things to Nick. He wanted to kill me because I said, I'm going to leave unless we need to humanize this. We need to bring it up. I want all the frying bins thrown out in the cafeteria. I want salad bars. I want good food. He said, we can't afford it. And I said, you must afford it. You've got to bring health to these kids.
Yeah.
And then we needed a rec center. I demanded he put TVs in all the rooms that they could control, but that they at least knew what was happening in the world. And so there were all kinds that we put forced lockers in all these kids. They got all their things were stolen. They're always worried about where they're going to, when they come back, their stuff was stolen. It was a lot of wild stuff going on. And I said, we have got to make this. And I brought my own son there, Jeff, who eventually played professional tennis. And I just said, all these pros and Nick are the parents of all these kids.
Yeah.
We got to take care of these kids. And the top players got the really creme de la creme treatment. But everyone else, they weren't treated like superstars. And they all wanted to be in group 1 or 2, but the chances of them getting there were just about 0. So my role there, I started to look at this issue of toughness and all the issues involved. And that was my learning lab. I mean, I was just in the perfect place for me to understand how the mind and body work and how important it is that this person inside be motivated, be fully engaged, love what they're doing. And if they don't make it, this is still a great opportunity for them to push the envelope and to find something that'll help them for the rest of their life. That was the perspective I tried to bring. Then I would have them come off court and do video sessions where we would show the best players, synchronized to music. I would have them do visualization. Mm-hmm. But they loved it because they could fall asleep on the floor and literally just go away because the on-court work was so hard for them. So I began to get some sense from them that there might be some value here. But in the beginning, it was a little hard to get their confidence.
I want to take a quick moment to thank everyone who's been sharing the Strategic Minds podcast. Your support is what helps us grow and reach more leaders who want to think and act strategically. If you've been finding value in these conversations, I'd love for you to follow in their footsteps. Share the podcast with a few friends or colleagues in your network who you think would benefit from becoming more strategic in their work. Your word of mouth makes all the difference, and I truly appreciate it. Are you a high potential leader but feel like you're spread too thin, too many priorities, too many fire drills, and not enough time to think? Then how exactly are you going to prepare yourself to get promoted to the next level? Simple, you practice. The Strategic Fitness System is your place to practice the skills and gain the confidence to prepare to succeed at the next level. At the heart of the system are 50 workouts, each of which consists of a video, reading, tool to practice, and digital journal. And the beauty is, each workout only takes 10 to 20 minutes to complete. Research shows that nearly 30% of leaders fail in their first 18 months of a new leadership role. Are you willing to take that risk with your career? If you're ready to take control of your future and develop the skills and confidence to crush it at the next level, then subscribe to the Strategic Fitness System today and build your personal competitive advantage. For more information, visit strategyskills.com. After all, practice makes profit. One of the things I just wrote down that you said I thought was really poignant was this idea of humanize the environment. And I think that's a good application for business leaders out there. You know, when we do strategic planning work, oftentimes we do a situational analysis. We look at the external market, the customers, the competition. We look at the internal, but we don't necessarily take time to really think about humanizing the environment. So to your point, are we putting our employees in places both physically and mentally where they can thrive, where they can grow, where they can be nurtured and developed? So I think that's a key piece. Jim, one of the things you write about is the idea of purpose and values being an important anchor, especially when folks are in higher pressure situations. Maybe share with us a little bit about your perspective on the importance of value and purpose as leaders in all walks of life try to navigate their environment.
So it took a while for me to get here. I'm a data guy, and we have to collect this data and then synthesize it and look at it from a variety of different perspectives. And we began to realize that the centerpiece of everyone's life is their sense of purpose. Why are they here? Why are you doing this? Why are you playing sport? If these athletes at the academy there because their parents wanted them there. You know, Andre Agassi hated the academy, hated tennis. And he was promised that if he made a lot of money, became very famous, if he became number one in the world or top 10, he would find happiness and fulfillment. And he achieved all of those things. And if you read his book, Open, which is a brilliant, brilliant read, he went from 1 to 141 in the world. He literally said, this was a false promise. It's not true.
Yeah.
And then he and his physical trainer, Gil Reyes, brilliant person, just shut the whole thing down. And they reinvented Andre Agassi's sense of purpose for life. And he decided that it didn't make any sense for him to chase fame. What he wanted to do was to leverage all of his money, fame, all of his sponsors to build his charter school in Las Vegas that would give kids a chance to do something that would never have a chance for. And he went from there to back to number one in the world with a whole different sense of purpose and perspective. And it endeared him to the world in a way. He got rid of the fake hair and everything else. He just became himself.
Yeah.
And to this day, I think he has a life with Steffi Graf that's just unimaginably different than it would have been had he didn't really discover a purpose that meant something deep for him. And that was what we always do. We try to help people understand the why behind everything you're doing. And if you don't have the right why, it's very hard. And that's why I work so hard with parents, with athletes, with executives to get that right. Because what we learned was you're so much better if it's not about you. If you're doing something for others, that somehow lights you up. We're social creatures. And that's how we survive. We band together, and it was not about us. It was helping those that we care about, survive and thrive in the world. And so that has become the centerpiece of all of our work. And that was a long time getting all of that, but I'm so grateful for having that stake in the ground because it's made an enormous difference in our work.
Yeah, Jim, one of the things I love about your work is you give folks a lot of practical tools and frameworks to think about things like their values, their purpose. One of your books, The Power of Story, you have a lot of great examples in there and techniques, the tombstone technique, for folks to really start to dig into why they do what they do. So, for the leaders listening out there, really think about, have you identified your purpose? Have you identified that legacy or what people would put on your tombstone? What do you want to really be remembered by? And Jim, you do a nice job in that book of really, drilling down. And sometimes it takes 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 iterations for people to really dig into that central purpose that they're trying to get to. So, kudos to you for providing those techniques. I'd be interested, Jim, as you think about that time there at the academy and since then working with Dan Jansen and other key athletes, what are some of the things that you've noticed for people that maybe weren't successful in pressure situations? Sometimes that's referred to as choking or underperformance, but are there patterns or trends that lead to people underperforming in pressure situations?
So it's a great question. And I had an opportunity for a couple of years to work with Novak Djokovic.
Oh,
And he has this down the line backhand that is absolutely incredible. And his serve wasn't that great. He was double faulting a lot. He was having trouble. But if you look at him today, it's almost like he was born with that backhand, or he was born with this incredible serve, one of the best spot servers ever to have played.
yeah.
And that's not the way it was. He had to, how many down the line backhands did he have to miss in order for him to get to a yes? And he would make errors and errors and errors. And so we can't, if it's really complicated, we've got to be able to tolerate no's. And that's the basis of resiliency.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I really love about sport and something like tennis is that you make mistakes constantly, and you don't make them on purpose, but the brain is calculating the fact that wasn't a yes. It's like a very, very powerful computer between your ears. And all you've got to do is allow that learning process to take place without really jamming up the system with a lot of negative emotion or self-doubt or anything else. All it means is you're not there yet. You're getting closer, but you need more no's to know what it is that you've got to add in order to get to yeses. And then to be able to do that under pressure, it's going to be another process, because the stronger that connection that you've made in those motor neurons, and that myelin has been repeatedly coding through over and over exercise and working those pathways, all of a sudden now it holds up under pressure. And you really start to love the very things that you were so afraid of before. So competition and pressure is something, it's a gift, because it gives you a chance to know how you're doing. It's a little test, and to see if you've actually done enough so that this will eventually hold up in the crucible of really a lot of important stress. I love to watch and to work with military people, special forces. The military has learned, because it's life and death, they've figured it out. They know what it takes. And so they work with the whole person, the way they walk, the way they carry themselves, discipline. They have a drill instructor from hell. They have all kinds of people that force them to repeat over and over again, whether it's with their parachute, it's their gun, taking it down, putting it back together, with blinders on, to be able to do it all, create every possible situation that might occur, and they repeat it over and over again. And they never think about failure other than, you are not good enough yet. And so the whole idea is, become the best you can be, and you're going to have to work until that becomes the reality of who you are. And so that's how we're designed. And if we just look at sport, at life as an opportunity to build resiliency, that's probably the core asset that we need to have, because life is tough And we have to keep learning. And learning means no's, a lot of them.
Yeah, a lot of wonderful things to unpack there. I mean, I jotted down tolerate the no's. Again, for leaders out there, how often do we get uncomfortable? Do we get defensive when we're not succeeding, when people are disagreeing with us? But if we're going to have that curious mind, the ability to innovate, to do things differently, we also have to be able to tolerate the no's, as Jim talked about, which will then build that resiliency. So great stuff there, Jim. Another area that I find fascinating, you talk about the fact that time is really meaningless or valueless until it intersects with energy. And you've done a lot of great work around that. Maybe you could share your perspectives at a high level around that phrase and what it really means.
So I tend to see things, when I look at things, I oftentimes turn things upside down and try to see if it actually holds together. And on our board at the Human Performance Institute, we had Stephen M.R. Covey, who was the son of Stephen Covey. Mm-hmm. And I'd gotten to know, the Coveys pretty well. And I would say to them, the entire time management system, which they were right in the middle of, they built their whole company around it, is based on a flawed premise. And they go, no, not a chance. $1 billion industry, there's too many smart people. This is not the case. And I said, well, tell me if I've got it right here. Isn't this the promise of time management? That first of all, you have to know your values. You have to know what matters most to you. And then once you do that, you've got to be disciplined and courageous in investing time in all those things and people that matter most to you. And if you do that, you will have, that's how success will be defined for you, is that you will invest time in the things that matter to you, that define success for you. And I said, how close am I? And they go, that's it, 100%. And I said, that's unequivocally false. Time has no power, no valence, nothing. I said, I would watch at the Nick Bollettieri Tennis Academy, everyone would show up on time. But if you're not fully engaged in the time you have, aligned with whatever the mission was, you can spend endless hours, not 10,000 hours, but 100,000 hours and get worse because you're not there. So you have to have the intersection of energy, and that's what makes time valuable, either in the opportunity to invest energy or to renew energy. But time has no value. It's simply an opportunity. And energy is the resource that is so precious. And if we only have a little bit of time, but we bring our full and best energy, we can have a huge impact on our children, on whatever time we have with spouses or partners or families. And I want you to have an obsession about energy, not obsession about time.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Jim, what are the biggest mistakes or misses that people have as it relates to energy management? Maybe even some of the myths out there. What do you see people missing as it relates to the energy piece?
Well, there is this thing that when I began to open up that envelope, because I love science, all science, chemistry, physics, everything is about energy. My dad was an engineer, brilliant chemical and petroleum engineer. And he was very disappointed when I went into psychology. He said, that is not a science.
Oh, geez.
He said, I would just ask you one thing. If you go in, try to build it around the science of energy, because that's where it all's going to go eventually. So I said, okay, Dad, I'll do my best. And so I really pushed the envelope on that dynamic. And now it's like, I can't think outside that envelope. It's the best explanatory tool I can. We had to separate, all energy comes in the human body from the mitochondria. The cells produce energy. Every cell except red blood cells have their own energy production plants. And that comes from the physical body. And that physical body, really infuses energy emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually, our values, our sense of purpose. But we had to separate ourselves from all the woo-woo energy that was out there that was not science-based. And so there's so many people that recognize that, something about energy. When you're out of energy throughout the day, life becomes a nightmare. And if you have energy, and particularly positive energy, it's like, this is how I want to live my life. So we got to figure out where in the body or how in the body do we ensure we have enough energy to complete the mission with our lives. And so it's been a really interesting, really evolution. All of our programs at the Institute were around managing your energy. And we had the surgeon as athlete. We trained them the way we train elite athletes, surgeons and physicians, nurses, because they, in a sense, they have to, I want them fully engaged with the absolute amount of energy they need to complete the mission if I'm on that operating table. And if they're starting to disengage, if their energy lapses, they don't understand how to stabilize blood sugar, if they can't really get the fitness required for an 8-hour surgery, the consequences can be deadly. And the same with all military forces. What we brought to them was the understanding of how to recover energy so that you never run out of energy in the completion of a mission. And that was the contribution I think we brought to the military folks. And I have such respect for all of them.
Yeah, and to build on that, Jim, you talk a little bit about the fact that we're oscillatory beings and the importance of periodization. And we know that from an athlete perspective, if we lift, chest exercises, every day of the week, we're not giving our chest the opportunity to rebuild those muscles. How could you share with some leaders out there the importance of the oscillatory effects and really managing that and the idea of periodization?
So, it's such an interesting thing when you look at every part of we are oscillatory beings in an oscillatory universe. It's all wave energy.
Yeah.
And whether you want to put it through the lens of quantum energy or string energy, string dynamics, we are oscillatory beings. And the more we create waves, beautiful waves of energy expenditure followed by energy recovery, the more harmony. Our body loves this sense of balance called homeostasis in the body. And the more we work, and then we somehow feel that rest and recovery is for wimps. It's like, if you're really tough, just gut it out.
Right.
Well, we help people to understand, particularly military, that's when you start to fail. You make bad decisions. You don't see things that should be seen. The opportunities that were right in front of you, you missed. And the same is true with a CEO, that they have to figure out how to oscillate and be fully engaged when it matters and disengage when it doesn't, and don't screw it up. So when I ask you what matters most, your family matters most to you when you really get down to it. But you're fully engaged at work a lot of the time, not all the time. But when you come home, you're like a dead person walking. You really don't have that sense of, this is the most precious part of my life. So we've got to figure out how to get more energy and how to oscillate throughout the day so that when you come home, you're the best version of you that you could ever be. And they know the way you let people know that you care about them, you don't spend time with them. You invest the full and best energy you have in whatever time you have. Because you take life out of your body, your energy, and invest it in those that you care about. That's how people know you care. Not the time you spent, but the energy you invested at the time and the time you had. And if you were really tired and still brought your best energy, they know you really care.
Yeah, Jim, you share a great story in The Power of Story about, the parent that says, well, I'm going to invest 3 hours and go watch my kid's soccer game. And they get to the game and they're on their phone the whole time. They're taking calls and the kid knows they're not really invested and they really know they're not invested, but they don't have that discipline.
You can't fool people with your energy. People know that you're fading, you're not really there. And then you say, I'm doing all this hard work for you. I'm helping you have a great life. Give me a break here. I'm tired. So that doesn't really resonate very deeply. You give energy to the things you care about, period.
Yeah. Well said. And Jim, in your mind, what would be the 2 or 3 factors that for leaders listening out there say, hey, these are 2 or 3 areas where if you really start to focus on this can make a difference in your energy, your positive energy?
Well, again, all energy comes from the physical body and cellular dynamics.
Yep.
And that's called the Krebs cycle. And it's in the union of oxygen and glucose. So the fitter you are, it's called oxygen transport. So you think, well, as an athlete, we worked with people like Josh Waitzkin, who was a world-class chess champion. We had him working like he was an elite athlete, doing sprints and lifting weights, and he was about as buff as you can be. And people go, well, all you have to do is move a pawn from here to here.
Right.
Why do you need all that?
Right.
And the fact is, he needed oxygen transport efficiency. It's just incredible because his matches would last sometimes 6 to 8 hours. And if he bonked even for 1 or 2 moves, the game is over.
Yeah.
So, in a sense, CEOs, all of us are chess. We're in a chess match. We have to make good decisions. We have to make priorities. And so the fitter we are, and you think, well, I'm not an athlete. Well, you are an athlete in the sense you're training for life so that you really are the most extraordinary example of committing to what you say is important and actually following through. And the other thing is your diet. You think, well, how important is my diet? I'm an executive or I'm just a parent. Well, your diet is what's going to determine this ignition point with your oxygen. So your sleep is the biggest window of opportunity for recovery. If you're not sleeping well, it compromises the waveform and it will compromise your ability to be your best when it matters most to you. So stretching, flexibility, walking, getting outside, doing things that really help you kind of ground yourself in this notion of recovery is important, and recovery is physically important, it's emotionally important, it's mentally important, and it's spiritually important to reconnect with your purpose and your values on a regular basis. And why you're here, so that we've learned that purpose opens the vault to your energy. And we have this bias to really conserve energy. I call it a conservation bias. We did a little experiment with people. We took away their remote, control devices with TVs, and they would go as long as 2 hours before they get up and change the channel because they didn't want to have to get up. We don't want to do it any more than is absolutely necessary. We want to conserve energy. That comes from our ancestors, because when food and water and everything was a shortage, those who didn't really conserve energy didn't make it till Tuesday. Well, we have most of that, but we still have an energy. If you want to have a big life, you got to be a big spender. You got to spend energy. But if you want to be a big spender, big investor, you really have to have a big bank account. You have to make a lot of opportunities. So you need a really big, unbelievable capacity for oxygen transport. You need to eat really well. You need to take care of yourself. What we learned at the Institute kind of was, and this is why Johnson & Johnson wanted to buy our company. We built the case for the fact that health ignites performance. That's all we were doing at the Institute with these thousands and thousands of high-level performers. We were getting them healthier physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And when that happens, they automatically go to another level. So health is the issue. And I began to get that sense. I understood mental health, but at Bollettieri's, I began to realize it's multidimensional health that will ignite genius. And so we got to focus on that whole person, and have a company now that is a non-for-profit. It's called Person First. And that's what we're all about, helping kids, youth, to understand how important their health is in having a big life. And they can do a lot to make sure their health is where it needs to be a big spender throughout their life.
Yeah, Jim, that framework of, mind, body, spirit, emotions, and really that multidimensional perspective. I love the way that you help us, pull back and see that bigger picture, but then dive back in and give us some really great tools and techniques around diet, sleep, and so forth. So a lot of great things there. And again, we'll connect Jim's books to the show notes. Jim, as your career has evolved, one of the areas that you've talked about was, mind, body, but then this evolution into character, and how do you define character, and what's the importance of character to one's success?
Well, I have to tell you, I still pinch myself, and I realize as a performance psychology, I've gotten into the character space,
Right.
moral and ethical character. How did I get here? But again, it's this an amazing journey that I've been on at the Institute. Everybody who came to the Institute, the first thing we did was we drew blood. We had 6 phlebotomists drawing blood. If you walked through the door, we grabbed your blood. We did a pretty extensive panel. We put you in a bod pod for lean body mass. We measured everything, and we put you on a 90-day mission to test all the principles. And then we checked with you at 90 days, 180 days. And our goal was that in 5 years, you would look back and say, this was the best thing I could ever have done in my life.
Mhm.
And it was really amazing. And all they were doing is managing their energy better.
Mhm.
That was the whole thing, achieving a higher level of health. So it's so interesting that the more we got into that envelope, the more we began to see solutions that were they were smaller. They were little tiny tweaks and things that could make a big difference down the road. We put them on a trajectory that actually in 3 or 4 years, it was like astonishing for them and for us. And so we are all on a trajectory, and we want to help people understand that every day you're either on that trajectory or you're moving away from it. You want to align your energy with what you say matters most to you. And so you're a work in progress, and you're never going to get it 100%. You're always going to be, failing here, failing there, and you say periodization, because we're oscillating all the time. Our internal chemistry is changing. We're in a place where our diet isn't that great. We had to travel across 5 time zones, but we did all that work with Olympians, and we begin to realize, there is a way to minimize the disruption in your physiology and to still complete the mission that matters most to you in your life. And so that tombstone exercise, and to really establish priorities. And for us at the Institute, it's one of the last books that I wrote with Dr. Sheila Walker Olson. It's on wise decisions. It's probably the most important asset that we have as human beings, is our capacity to make good decisions. And it's really unfortunate that no one knows how that happens. If you ask parents, they don't know, they don't teach it. They just hope their kids become good decision makers. Schools don't, they don't teach it in high school, elementary school. They don't teach it in college and graduate schools. So, it's really an interesting area. And we try to do a deep science-based kind of look at how decisions are made, and how do we build the reference, we call it YODA, your own decision advisor, to help you go in there and really understand how to make a decision that aligns with the trajectory you want to be on. And then this notion of character, we began to realize that character, there's different kinds of character. And the one that was the highest predictor of enduring success was what we came to call moral and ethical character. And that is your honesty, your integrity, your compassion, your truthfulness, your kindness, your gratefulness, your generosity, your empathy, and respect for others. Those were the crown jewels of endurance. If you have that feeling about yourself as, quote, what we call a good person, you're not fighting for your psychological survival. If you are in a competitive situation, and if you lose, it's just another opportunity to learn, but you are, quote, a good person. I call it the hidden scorecard. Then there's another area that are also assets that are acquired. Those are performance. They help you become a better performer. That's confidence, that's focus, it's, persistence, resilience, it's positivity, it's self-awareness, it's energy, vigor. So we looked at all of those, and we tried to determine which of those assets will give you the greatest sense of fulfillment, the sense of real success in your mind and enduring success. And for us, and I was completely surprised, it was the moral and ethical assets that made you feel the most whole, made you feel like regardless of the extrinsic successes and how big your resume is, if you have a great resume, but you don't see yourself or others don't see you as, quote, a good person, there's something that just doesn't fit, and you're not going to endure through that as well. So that was a big wake up for me. And this book I wrote with Karen Kenney, Leading with Character, explores all of that. And so, it's a journey for me. I don't know where it's going to take me, but I'm continuing to open up a new envelope and try to assess where this goes. So I feel like more of a philosopher at times, and maybe even, following in the footsteps of great thinkers like Aristotle and Socrates, because they talked about the importance of character. But I never thought I would end up in that space.
Well, we're glad you did, Jim, for sure. And you just touched on the evolution of your thought leadership over the years, from mental toughness to energy management to story to character to decision making. I'd love to finish our conversation with some of your takeaways. I mean, you've worked with a lot of wonderful people. You've come up with a lot of great frameworks and concepts to help others adopt some of these high performance techniques and tips. What are some of the key takeaways or insights you've had from your career? Things that you've learned from other people?
Well, that's a really interesting question for me. I'm obsessed to try to get to better answers, and I'm never satisfied with where I am. Every book, and I've written now 19, and every book I've written is something that I think might prove valuable to someone else. I don't write them to become anything, it's an insight, because I feel like I've really been fortunate to be in an environment. I miss the Human Performance Lab. That was the greatest learning environment I ever had. And we had a full rehabilitation center on our campus, our 9-acre campus. And I would go in there and watch how they work to rehabilitate, to heal people who had been broken in some way. And then I worked with wounded warriors. And yesterday I did a big program for the staff of a group of people who use horses it's called Bravehearts at Harvard, Illinois, and to help them understand how they can reach into the soul of these athletes. They are military athletes, special forces athletes, and to help heal them. And it is our energy, our caring, our kindness, our reaching out and giving this energy of life to others. And to me, that was the biggest insight. If I want to make a difference in someone's life, an athlete, I can't do it unless I have energy and I'm willing to invest energy unconditionally in them as a person, in helping them achieve their mission. Has nothing to do with me. All I am is a person that might give some advice here and there, but they have to feel first that I care about them, and they know by how careful I am about making sure that my energy is invested meticulously in what most importantly they would like to see happen in their lives. So we're all energy investment specialists, and we have to really be careful. We don't have an infinite supply. If you're a Wall Street investor, you got to make good choices about where to put your energy. But that's how people know you care. And so for me, I'm always trying to look at, where is my energy going? How at this stage in my life can I have great energy, or the best energy I can? How can I have the best health? And it's not for me. I don't care about my health. I care about what I can do for others, which will come through the health that I have, which produces energy. So that's probably my biggest takeaway, is that energy ignites caring and health, and a sense of, real in-depth, authentic concern for other people and causes. And it's your energy that makes everything happen. So I would guess that's probably my the most important insight that I've had is how my energy affects everyone around me. And if I want it, I'm going to have to work to get it because it doesn't come easily.
Yeah, Jim. And again, with your storied career, it's the ability to come up with that, key overarching insight is wonderful. And again, I would encourage everybody out there to think about that last question that Jim just posed. Where is my energy going? So I'd encourage all of you to take a few minutes after you listen to this podcast and jot down, where is your energy going? Look at your calendar for the week. Where is your energy being invested? Not just your time, as Jim points out, big difference between time and energy, but where is your energy actually going? And does that match up with your priorities and your purpose and your values? So wonderful stuff there, Jim. I'd love to close then our conversation with your responses to 6 questions that we refer to as the strategic 6.
Okay.
So number 1, what was your first job?
I was hired to water lawns and dig graves at a cemetery.
Wow. Okay. So maybe a precursor to the tombstone exercise.
Well, as I would go around the graveyards, I would see all these inscriptions on the tombstones. And I would always think, well, I wonder if that's true about that person. And I wonder, what would I like on my tombstone? And I think that actually did kind of pave a little bit. I worked there so I could get my first car. And I paid $200 for a 49 Ford Coupe. And the reason I worked so hard there is that I wanted that car.
Right. Gotcha. Number 2, what's your favorite vacation spot?
My favorite vacation spot, it's all over the Rocky Mountains. The greatest time I had was with my 3 sons, 4-wheeling and fishing, going on fishing and 4-wheeling all over the Rocky Mountains and in Montana. And those are my most precious memories, and I will always cherish them. My 3 sons are my greatest accomplishments.
That sounds great. Number 3, what's the one word that best describes you?
One word that best describes me is relentless.
Yes, I would agree. Number 4, what's the one book that's had significant impact on your development?
I'm an avid reader. I have thousands of books, but I would say if I had to pick one, it would be Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Mm-hmm.
I have so many copies of that. I've got them ragtabbed, all beat up. He was just a pure, absolute genius. And after all he went through with the concentration camps, Man's Search for Meaning will last forever, certainly for me.
Yes, agreed. Number 5, what's one piece of advice you'd most like to share with other people that would fit on a bumper sticker?
Kindness matters.
Yes. And number 6, what's the most exhilarating moment you've experienced in your professional life?
Well, I've had a number of things, but this one is going to probably be a little strange. But I had an article written about me, and they compared me to Fred Rogers. He was the Fred Rogers of tennis and sport. Fred Rogers was one of my heroes. And I would play at all the corporate events, any event I'm in, because he was the beautiful, most perfect example that I could give of full engagement with all these children, with his life, with what he cared about. His energy was 100% always there. Mm-hmm. And for me to have someone think that I might be someone who had that kind of energy directed at the causes and people I care about, that was a supreme compliment. I'll never forget that. And then I received the John Winthrop Wright Ethics in Action Award in 2024 from Arthur Schwartz, who is the co-founder of Positive Psychology, character.org, because my whole life has kind of been around this notion of character, and to have that acknowledgement that maybe I have made a difference in that space, that was a crowning kind of moment for me. And to be able to have that delivered by Dr. Arthur Schwartz, he and Marty Seligman are the 2 heroes in positive psychology. That was a crowning moment for me, for sure.
Wonderful, Jim. Well, I truly appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. I've been following your work for many, many years. And for me, it was like being a kid in a candy store today to get a chance to chat with you. And you'd shared a lot of great insights. I think that will help all of us reach our highest level of performance, both professionally and even more importantly, personally. So thank you so much for being my guest on the show.
Rich, I just want to say I've done a lot of podcasts, and your professionalism with your team is the very best I have ever had the opportunity to be with. Your thoughtfulness, the fact that you've read and know all my background, know all the books. I feel like it's my privilege to have someone who is so knowledgeable and has a team that is actually interested in the highest level of excellence. I hope I have lived up to it. But you are the best of the best that I've experienced, and I've been down that road with a lot of people. So thank you.
Well, Jim, thank you. That means more than you can know. So thank you so much for those kind words. And again, really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you, Rich.
Any insights?
You play to win the game.
Any further insights?
You don't play to just play it.
Insightful.
I want winners.
I played the game to win.
I want people that want to win.
It's very insightful.
Our Winsight, or idea for advantage, comes from Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, who said, "We've unplugged a lot of things that were taking up time and mind space, and we've understood that less is more." As you think about your company, your organization, your team, what have you unplugged lately so that you can give yourself and your team more time in the most productive areas? There's got to be things that aren't generating the value that you're investing from a time perspective. So we need to think about on a regular basis, what should we unplug? What should we stop doing or stop putting time, attention, and budget to so that we can grow in other areas? Thank you for listening to today's episode of Strategic Minds. I hope this conversation gave you some valuable insights that you can apply to your business and put into action. If you found this episode helpful, we'd greatly appreciate it if you'd leave a short review, maybe even a 5-star review on your podcast player. And thank you to everyone who's been sharing the podcast. Your support really helps us grow and make the world a little bit more strategic. If someone in your network could benefit from this conversation, please feel free to share it with them. If your team is ready to strengthen its strategic thinking and planning skills and get beyond the day-to-day tactical grind, visit strategyskills.com. There you can explore our workshops, online courses, strategic coaching, free Strategic Thinker newsletter, and my latest book, Strategic. You can also take your leadership development to the next level with the Strategic Fitness System, our state-of-the-art executive development platform. Until next time, remember, be strategic to be your best.